Please welcome House Majority Floor Leader John Eccles, House Democratic Leader Emily Virgin, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee Roger Thompson, and Senate Democratic Leader Kay Floyd. Moderating today's panel is State Chamber President and CEO Chad Warmington.
All right, thank you all for being here. And I'm really excited to actually be in person to do this year. Last year we still had to do it remotely, so I'm just excited we get to see your bright shining faces right here on stage. All right, so rather than reading the panelists' bios, because most of you already know them, we're going to take the time that we would have, we're going to do a quick poll. So if you have not, get your phones out right now, look at the screen or the QR code that's on your table. There's some cards on your table, and get ready, because this is going to be a very interactive portion of this that we're going to be asking you some questions as well. So you don't want to miss out and get your opportunity to weigh in. So it's a pretty slick little deal. Your camera should grab the QR code and pull up the app, and then we'll go from there. You don't have to do anything other than to do that. So we're going to talk about some really important issues, and you'll have the opportunity to weigh in on those, and we'll have a little discussion about maybe what some of their thoughts are on it with the panel as well. So we have limited time today, and we want to cover a lot of important topics. So we're going to aim for succinct answers from our panel, and from this bunch, that is going to be extremely difficult, but we're going to do our best. So, and I thought maybe too, in case there's anybody out here who doesn't know what succinct means, I had to look it up myself. I'm like, what does succinct mean? So it's especially of something written or spoken briefly and clearly expressed. And so I'm confident that we can get there. So to keep us on track, though, to keep us accountable, we're going to have a timer. And so we're going to have our timer up here that the audience can see, that the panelists can see. And so this is kind of my chamber version of Pardon the Interruption, where we're going to keep things moving along as well. So to get started, to practice, we're going to have a practice question, and it's going to be up here on the screen. And the question is for our panel as well as for the audience: which legislative leader is most likely to still be holiday shopping on December 24th. So this is just a little test to make sure it works, but you got to weigh in here. So Leader Eccles jumps out to a commanding lead. Commanding lead. It's growing. Got 157 people responded so far, over 180. John?
I know, right?
Wow. Leader Floyd, everyone is confident. You're probably done, aren't you?
Done?
Are you done shopping? You're done.
Yes.
I feel like my wife has been talking to you people.
All right, so that's how it's going to work. The results will be on the screen, and then we'll have some dialogue about that. So, John, get to work. You got some work to do. We want you to prove that incorrect. So, all right, our first topic is going to be workforce, and so many of you in this room are experiencing the immediate strain of not being able to find workers across all industries. I know from my conversations with you, it does not matter what industry you're in. When I talk to you, it's a workforce issue that's top of the mind for you. And so that's retail, skilled labor, corporate, you name it. We didn't get here overnight, we know, and we won't have a simple solution out. It's going to be complex. It's going to be a multifaceted approach to solving this with strategic buy-in necessary from the educational system, the legislature, and most importantly, you need to buy in to helping us resolve those issues from the business community. So we're going to move on to our first poll. And so get out your phone, get ready. Tell us the primary barrier that your companies are facing when you're filling open jobs in your business today. And so you'll see on your app that you've got the lack of soft skills, failed drug test, lack of higher education degree, lack of technical skills, not enough applicants, salary requirements too high, wage inflation, or unemployment and benefits disincentivizing work. So we'll give you a little time to let that flow in. So like Eccles, not enough applicants is jumped out to commanding lead. So it's really interesting. It matches up a lot with a lot of the work that we've done with the poll we did with the Business Roundtable as well, just in terms of kind of the prioritization of the barriers. So I want to start out with you, Leader Eccles. So looking at these results and then kind of just intuitively in your own business and then some of the conversations you're having with constituents, What are some of the ways that the legislature can focus its efforts next session on addressing workforce issues?
Well, it's great to be here because I get to go first. I'm going to do a very soft, short, flowery opening so everybody else feels the same pressure to go quickly. It's wonderful to be here, but I want to jump right into it.
You bet.
And I'm used to every week talking into a camera with a timer on the side.
That's right. There you go.
Here's the bottom line. I loved the speech we heard today just now. But the bottom line is we have some systemic problems inside the state of Oklahoma where we have not been strategic in graduating the applicants that we need. And that at the end of the day is what it is. I've spent a lot of time, if you've watched me on TV talking about it, I talked to you a lot about it. In the ARPA meeting, I see Kyle Hilbert here talking about those things. We have got to change our strategy as a state, including fiscally incentivizing the degrees that we need. So stop paying the same rate that we pay, I'll pick on poli-sci majors because that's what I was. Stop paying the same thing we pay for poli-sci degrees in terms of funding as we pay for example, an engineering degree, which we need. The legislature, you will see us do some things next year through ARPA fundings and through others to start pushing these degree programs that we have to get out into the workforce. If the days of not being strategic in who we graduate and the way we've always done them, those days are over. And by the way, other states are ahead of us in that, and they're having these discussions now. Those are the discussions, what we need here from the business community. We tangentially know what degrees we need. Let us know which we need, and you're going to see some legislation next year to start paying those degrees more from a standpoint from what we pay for in the state of Oklahoma.
Great. Any other? I want to jump in. We got 4 minutes, as you can see, left on this topic, and kind of just be free-flowing a little bit. But if you got a passionate answer, you want to jump in, Leader Virgin?
Well, I am passionate in the fact that I strongly believe that the mall is a great place to be on Christmas Eve because it's basically me and a bunch of men wandering around with aimless looks on their faces. And I know where I'm going, and so I think I'm probably ahead of you in that poll because I have bought nothing so far. But on the actual question, Chad, not enough applicants obviously jumping out ahead. And what I think is a lot of what we heard from the keynote speech, which is that obviously a lot of people are rethinking what they want right now. And that's not something that the legislature can really control. I know that businesses are coming up with creative solutions to address that and incentivize people. But what we can control, I think, is something that we've seen for a long time, which is that higher education is becoming unaffordable for a whole lot of folks. And you see that skills gap a lot in hiring, I think. And representing the community that houses the University of Oklahoma, I know that funding for higher education has steadily decreased over the last decade. And we have to take a look at that. And I think that involves some of what Leader Eccles is saying, but to make sure that we have people with those skills, we have to make sure that an education is attainable for them. So that's where I think you'll see the House Democratic Caucus focusing a lot of our efforts, but I think childcare is also one of those huge areas that folks are having a hard time finding affordable childcare. That is keeping a lot of women out of the workforce. We know that the pandemic affected women disproportionately, so I think that we also have to take a look at making sure that we have an abundance of affordable childcare.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today, and so far you're scolding us and giving us a definition of succinct has not worked.
Well, I mean, I didn't really think it would, but it was worth a shot.
That's what I want to point out.
I also, by the way, I retain the right to bump the timer out. So if you and Kay have some good stuff, we can bump it out. But go ahead.
I think when we look at where Oklahoma is, and we're certainly poised to the next step, we're one of the best career tech systems in the United States. And I think if we continue to work on that career tech system as well as higher ed. Secretary Mueller said a while back, and spoke to a number of us, who is the customer? The customer becomes the business. We understand that. We want to educate. But also that student is the customer of our education system so that they're ready for life. Career tech, just in the truck driving, which we have a great shortage of in Oklahoma. I think we've got over 340 now enrolled. They're spreading out across Oklahoma. So they're also addressing some of those needs as we move forward. I think the legislator's role in that is to see where people are walking and help them walk. There was a university in Edmond that didn't build their sidewalks for a number of years. They wanted to see where people were walking, then they built sidewalks. And I think we need to see where our businesses are going and build sidewalks to help them be able to complete that.
Yeah. Leader Floyd?
Well, I'm also very honored to be here, and the scolding didn't work for me either. So, but I can tell you what I'm hearing in my district, and that will bring it home a little bit. Some of you all know my district's completely within the city limits of Oklahoma City. It's a metro district. I have lots of businesses, lots of really great restaurants, and what I'm hearing is that the biggest disruptor that they have to the workforce is the pandemic. It still is. I mean, it didn't magically go away. Easter 2 years ago, it didn't magically go away Easter this year, and we're 3 weeks from starting year 3 of the pandemic, and it's a disruption to the workforce. They have parents/employees that have to nurse and take care of sick children or sick family members. If a child goes to school and is exposed and is quarantined, then you lose an employee for a period of time during that. If the school closes down, then you've got an even larger situation where you have employees that are staying home to be with their families. So it's a huge disruption, and we as a state need to address that and make sure that every individual who wants a vaccine can get a vaccine, that it's accessible, whether you're in the cities or in the rural areas. And we just need to admit that it's not going to go away for a while, and we need to plan around that and plan our workforce support around that too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just kind of want to also take a minute to divert and introduce you all, if you have not met. Chancellor Allison Garrett is here, and Chancellor Garrett is brand new. Stand up and say hello. So, brand new Chancellor of Higher Ed. And I think, Chancellor Garrett is ready to tackle this mission and work with you all. We stand ready to do that as well. And we know we have some challenges, but we also know that, together we can come up with some good policy solutions. Just kind of FYI as well, for us, when we did our survey of our members, and we asked them what the biggest barriers to them having growth in Oklahoma or was the biggest hindrance to their business workforce, by far was at the top of the list. So for us internally at the Chamber and the Research Foundation and Ben LePac, we spent an enormous amount of time over the last couple of months trying to figure out how we bring some solutions to you, and we really look forward to working with you on it. We know that this is a bipartisan issue. This is an issue that we're all going to get behind. There'll be some different ways to do it, but we're really excited to jump into that challenge with you, and we're really excited to work with you, Chancellor Garrett, as well. So we're going to jump into the next topic, which is the fun one, vaccines. And the COVID-19 vaccine, obviously, or the COVID-19 vaccine has quickly become a really politically divisive issue with the president's mandates on private employers, federal contractors, federal employees. The issue is creating a lot of uncertainty for businesses is the main issue. And while the courts have really remedied a lot of that and put a lot of those things on hold, that uncertainty is still there. But there's been a number of bills that have been filed at the state capitol that will actually take away a business's ability to make those decisions independently of government intervention of what's best for their business. It's a great concern to us, and so we're really paying a lot of attention to that, as you might expect. So we're going to change it up this round, and we're going to hear from our legislative leaders first before getting our audience take, and we'll start out with kind of a quick yes/no, and then we'll dig into it, so it won't be very limited. But the question that I have for you is, should businesses be given the flexibility to make vaccine-related decisions for their employees and customers without the involvement of the federal or state government? So let's do a quick yes, no, and then we'll dig into a little bit what we mean with that.
Yeah, the House caucus has come up in favor of a religious exemption for vaccines.
Okay.
Can I give the typical lawyer answer of it depends?
Sure.
No, I think that the House Democratic Caucus supports the rights of businesses and the freedom to make their own decisions.
Mr. Chairman.
So can you repeat the question?
You bet. So the essential part of it is, should businesses be given the flexibility to make decisions without involvement for the federal or state government?
I'm not speaking for a caucus, speaking for me, absolutely. They should have that flexibility.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself and not the caucus, yes.
Yeah, good. Well, and I think let's go ahead and jump in and see where the audience is. This one will be up on your Slido as well right now. We'll see the results pop in. And again, the question is, should businesses be given the flexibility to make vaccine-related decisions? I'm going to be really disappointed in this crowd if it doesn't stay at this level. It's kind of a no-brainer, but there's a lot of parts to parse out in that as well. And so I think we'll kind of get into that here really quickly. But obviously, high percentage of members in the audience think that the flexibility for businesses to make those decisions is the right answer. So obviously, over 200 responses, 89%. So let's talk about that and think about from the standpoint of what do you see happening this session and how do you think we should be addressing those issues? We'll just go back down the line. So we'll start out with you again.
Yeah, so the House Republican Caucus has had a caucus on this. So one of the things about being majority leader is I don't speak for me. I speak for the caucus.
Sure.
And the caucus has made it very clear they want more freedom for employees. They've made it very clear in an overwhelming fashion. So if I were to advise the business community, I would have two pieces of advice. We talked about this beforehand. Number one, be judicious and reasonable with exceptions. Number two, when we get stories, a few bad actors kind of hurts everybody. When we get stories of, for example, pregnant females where their doctors say don't give them a business who doesn't have a federal mandate says do it anyway, you're going to have some pushback. That's the reality. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but if you've ever heard me speak before, you don't have me come speak. If you want me to tell you what you want to hear, I don't sell that. I sell the truth. That's what I think you're going to have the issue. Now, when we engage, we have to engage in a way where you're dealing with, for example, businesses that have mandates that are dealing with the federal government, so they're required to do it. So it's a complicated issue that I think everybody's going to have to sit down. How do we strike that balance? And by the way, I should do this. I believe in the vaccine. I've taken the vaccine. I own a company that's given out more vaccines than probably the rest of this room combined, including the healthcare partners in here. But that being said, I think ignoring this issue and not having a robust discussion over it is going to lead to some policy that maybe businesses don't want, as opposed to everybody sitting out at the table and saying, we live in a representative system. How do we deal with where the caucus is versus how do we do something that works long term?
Yeah. We'll add some more time to the clock, but go ahead and let's get some opinions from you all as well.
Sure. I think that what we're focused on as the House Democratic Caucus is ensuring that folks know that the vaccine is the best way out of this pandemic, and making sure that we send the message that to keep the economy open, to keep people being able to go to work, to keep schools open, vaccines are the answer. So I think that we are focused on trying to get that bipartisan collaboration and getting that message out that this is the way out of the pandemic. I don't think you'll see us supporting or filing any legislation regarding vaccines. I don't think that the state legislature has much of a role there because, as I said, we want businesses to be able to require that if they want to. I know there are some federal issues there, but I'm not running for Congress. So. But I think that, again, we want partners in the business community and on the other side of the aisle in making sure that folks know the importance of the vaccine to the economy.
Sure. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, sir. It's a great issue to have a discussion about. And again, speaking for me, not for the caucus, but as we look at vaccines, I read here recently that somebody said, well, do I need to take the vaccine? And the person answering the question says, I don't know, I'm just a doctor, ask the politician. and sometimes that's the case. When you mix politics and health, you end up with politics. So when we come across to where I am personally on this, we're a right-to-work state. And if our business owners have mandates that is costing them employees and eventually they go out of business, that's on them. And I think that business owner, as I said before, has the right to be able to make that decision. I have the right whether to work there or to not work there. And so for me personally, I'm for that decision being left up to the businesses themselves.
Bring us home. Yep, thank you. That's right.
Well, I think that the interaction that government has on this, and specifically the state legislature, should be, regarding the vaccine, should be about access. I think our job as leaders is to ensure that every single Oklahoma has access to the vaccine. There are places in my district, and you all know where it is now, that people can't get a vaccine. It's not because they're not available, it's because sometimes transportation is not available to the people. Sometimes in the rural areas, you've got the elderly that can't get to vaccination safe sites. So it seems to me our job is just to make sure there's enough vaccines for everybody and then let the decisions be made on a personal level for the people of the state.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that go ahead, yeah. I think the clear lesson or the clear message from businesses, that they want to retain the flexibility, and I think I hear essentially agreement with that. And part of the problem has been, and much credit to the legislature as well, is we've got a really federal overreach problem. Is really what we're dealing with, and I think credit to the legislature for passing House Bill 1236 last year. They actually funded the Attorney General's office to be able to push back on some of this federal overreach. So for those constituents out there in some of these districts that are thinking the legislature hasn't done anything or should do more, I'd argue they were very proactive and did it last session in one sense. And so Attorney General John O'Connor has joined other states. And frankly, if you look across the legal landscape, those who believe that the federal government is overreach, those lawsuits have gone exceedingly well. And so I think we understand there's going to be a natural desire to want to react to that, and we want to engage in discussions with you on keeping it so that you can stoke the home fires at home, but also make sure we retain that private free enterprise system that's been so important for us to get through this. And so I think there's been some good discussion on that, and we look forward to having those discussions with you as well. But a lot of these issues are coming down from the federal government. We don't think any of them will probably actually ever end up becoming law or actually getting enforced because they're unconstitutional. And so far the courts are agreeing with us on that. So it's going to be a discussion I'm sure will be ongoing. And I think maybe from you all, be agreement. The temperature will probably drop on this as we get further into the year in terms of how court outcomes impact those decisions. And so maybe this won't be as pressing or burning an issue, and hopefully we'll be able to have some more calmer heads prevail and be able to discuss those things. So let's move on to anyone want to jump in on that, or is it?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to that is, and I do appreciate you putting it out, these are federal mandates that's coming out of the president, coming down. Federal mandates are handled inside of federal court. And the governor and the AG are doing a great job with that. Another major win yesterday out of Georgia along those same lines. And so by the legislature's action last year with the $10 million to the AG, we personally stand ready. I stand ready to add more money if we need to add more money to that to make sure we can continue to fight that federal overreach. And I think when you look at what the federal government is trying to do, the Congress is not trying to do. It's the president trying to do. And we need to be able to stand up. The legislature stood tall last year. We laid the groundwork for it, and it's working.
Yeah. I think we'll move on to another kind of federal-related question. This one is on federal funds and the revenue outlook. And so, over the last year or 18 months, Oklahoma's received about $1.87 billion in federal funds related to COVID-19. That's a heavy influx of cash. And the legislature, rightly so, put parameters on how to spend it to make sure that we aren't encumbering the state in future years with money that's one-time money. So very smart, and I'm glad that you did that. So couple that with, at the same time, we have higher than expected revenue collections from taxpayers, giving us a possible surplus of funds for the upcoming budget year. So I think the question is, and we'll start out with the audience on this one as well, is where would you like to see some of these federal funds invested? And we try to make the categories fit with what the requirements are that are going to be the money that's going to be flowing through the legislature and through ARPA dollars, and then also into out to the governor. But the broad categories are broadband, workforce, government services, healthcare access, COVID-19 mitigation, tax relief for roads and bridges. And so we'll let a few of you more jump in on this. Workforce issue is jumping right to the top in terms of where their priority would be in the audience in terms of where to invest those ARPA dollars. That's staying there, getting Bobby Stem's groups chiming in with roads and bridges as much as he can. I don't know if Bobby's in the room. He's probably running around getting people to say more roads and bridges. Look at Bobby, your work is being done. So roads and bridges, workforce, and broadband infrastructure at the top. So the question I have to the panelists is what specific areas, based on their feedback and kind of what you're hearing or getting a sense of the caucus, are you thinking you're going to see that deserve really significant federal ARPA dollars? We'll start at the other end and work our way back this time with you, Leader Floyd.
So I guess I would start by saying I always find it so ironic when the last question talks about federal overreach and this question's talking about billions of dollars the federal government's sending to us to fix a lot of problems we've created. So I kind of have a problem making those two work in my head sometimes. But I'm on the ARPA committee. Senator Thompson is the chair along with Representative Wallace, and I just have to start by saying that he's done a remarkable job. He has presented a vision for us and this great deal of money that's coming in that's going to be long-term strategic thinking. We want to look back 10 years from now and know that we made changes in the state that are going to last for generations. And so far, Senator Thompson has really kept his hand on the wheel. So everyone in here owes him a debt of gratitude for all the work he's doing on this. I will tell you, with the amount of money that's coming in, we've got 1.9 to the state and governor, then 1.3 to the cities and the counties and municipalities. And so roads and bridges, we've talked about as far as the ARPA money is concerned, but you've also got to factor in the infrastructure bill and what that's going to do, because that's going to be a lot of money that we can use on roads and bridges. So as long as I'm on the committee, I'm going to support Senator Thompson's direction, that is that we look at all the pots of money. We look at what's coming in with the infrastructure bill. We look what's coming into the cities and counties. We look what's coming into the state. And we all work together, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. We all work together to utilize this in the best way possible. No duplication, but moving the state forward. All of these are incredibly important issues. They really are. So I would say also there's little things like the dam system in our state. I don't know if you all know this, but we've got a lot of dams that need work. It's a little thing. People don't think about it on a daily basis, but there are 30 on a critical list. Just one of those breaks, then you've got reservoir problems, but even more, you've got human life problems. So there's so many little intricacies that we've got to look at and keep on the radar screen. So I couldn't pick one if I had to. It's just, I think we can do a lot for a lot. It's just going to take the 2 years and then the 4 years. But I'll let Senator Thompson explain it a little bit better.
As succinctly as I possibly can. One of the things about the extra money that's come in, you mentioned the 1.87, but if we take the whole package together that's come into Oklahoma, it's a little over $5 billion that we have at our disposal. The total impact, if you go back to CARES and the whole package, is an infusion of a little over $13 billion into the state of Oklahoma. And what's really good about the 1.87, then we got 167 million infrastructure. Recently on the last bill that we have from the feds on the 1.2 trillion, we will be picking up in that particular bill probably around $5 billion that'll be coming in. Bobby Stem and his group are at the top of the list. I'm just going to tell you, Bobby, you got all the money in that infrastructure bill you need. You're going to be taken care of. It's not going to be a problem. So we'll just take that top one off the list and we'll go on down the rest of them. One of the neat things that we have in spending the 1.87 is the complete collaboration between the House and the Senate and the administration. And the Speaker and the Governor Pro Tem agreed upon a pathway that would go forward on working groups, and then our joint committee, and then to a steering committee, and the Governor signing off on it. The Governor's pledged that he's going to honor that process. And so it is complete, harmonious working progress all the time. If you noticed in the last meeting, we came out with two recommendations. One was on broadband, and it's about $2.2 million. That's going to be broadband mapping. And if you want workforce development, you want education, you want health care, I think broadband is going to have to be one of those first issues. The second thing is that we did was $7.5 million for children's behavioral health emergency room at OU. OU stepped up, come to the table on that. We're going to be looking at health care access, but a lot of mental health is the same way. It's a great responsibility. We have till the end of 24 to encumber it, end of 26 to spend. We want to do everything that changes lives. And so there's a lot of money coming into the state. We want to make sure we do it. The other thing, Chad, I want to emphasize, as you did a few moments ago, these are one-time expenditures. These are not obligating our continuing appropriated budget.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the conversation already and agree with it. And I want to echo what you said, Chairman Thompson, about one-time money and caution that this money cannot be used to make drastic changes to our revenue structure in Oklahoma. When I first got elected in 2010, we had a lot of stimulus money, and what we saw after that were cuts to our revenue system that then had longer effects down the road. So I don't want us to be in that situation again where we get to a point where we're cutting core services once again. So I appreciate that we're having this conversation about it being one-time money. And I also, the pediatric mental health issue is a huge one. I hope that we see more investment in mental health in the overall system, because when we look at what progress we want to make in terms of education and criminal justice reform especially, mental health is the key, and those treatment services are key. So I think this is an opportunity for us to make some transformational changes that we've been wanting to make for a really long time.
And I think it comes down to two things: infrastructure and workforce development. Chairman Wallace and Chairman Thompson have done an incredible job with the ARPA group, working very closely with Governor Stitt's administration. But the bottom line is, when we spend more money in infrastructure, we're going to bring in more businesses that OG&E and Ken Miller can sell power to. And then when we add in the workforce, we're going to be able to keep them here. And even when we talk about all of these problems come down to mental health, we are not going to increase Oklahoma's mental health system without graduating more mental health workers. That is the harsh reality. So as we use these ARPA funds, I believe, though, you can have some strategic changes that will occur with those, some policy changes to make them go long term.
Amen. Right, look at that, right on time, like a pro, like you've done this before.
Every week.
Every week, yeah. Good deal. Great discussion on that. Want to talk, I'm going to move on to our legislative agenda and kind of get your take on some of those issues. Audience, you helped us craft this agenda and in terms of the prioritization, and we're going to ask you to kind of rate where you want us to focus, your priority, our efforts on, and really, so what's the focus, and we want to know what's most important. So let's go ahead and open up that poll. And so it's really a three-plank platform for us. It's making Oklahoma's tax code more competitive, addressing workforce shortages, or reducing the cost of doing business, primarily really through judicial and legal reform. Those are the kind of the key planks. And I knew before I asked the question what would be number one, and it's pretty clear. It's truly jumping out to us at everything we do. All the polling that we do is workforce is just extremely top of the mind on that. Give it a couple more minutes here, a couple more seconds. And yeah, it's about what we thought. So workforce, and then tax code more competitive, and then reducing the cost of doing business. So if you guys could just kind of comment on those areas and maybe just pick one of those three and just kind of let us know where you see your caucus aligning on those issues, that would be helpful. John, start back out with you.
Well, I'll go through all three very quickly. Addressing workforce shortages, we've talked about the fact we want to change the structure. We don't want to pay the same for every degree anymore. We actually want to completely stop that. We want to pay more, the state dollars we pay, for the degrees that we need. And the tax code more competitive, we passed both Speaker McCall was the driving force between an income tax cut and for both working Oklahomans and for businesses. We would like to keep going down that road. And we haven't had a good old-fashioned judicial reform fight in a while.
I know.
Are
you itching?
I was pretty involved in the workers' compensation fight that happened when we first did that. I think it's a great idea. I think we need to keep moving down that path to make sure we have the best business environment, and we have moved the other direction we need. So I think you're going to find uniform agreement and some pretty specific actions by the House Republican caucus on those three.
I think it's safe to say that workforce is where we're going to find the most alignment with the House Democratic Caucus, and the issues I spoke to earlier, higher education, child care, those are probably going to be the top issues for us. But I think that we also are really passionate about making sure that anyone who wants to work has as few barriers as possible to getting to work. And one of those areas that we've been working on is occupational licensing reform. Goes hand in hand with criminal justice reform, but making sure that people who are re-entering society are able to, without huge barriers, get into those positions that you all are desperately trying to fill.
Yeah.
So just addressing the three of them very quickly for me. You look at workforce shortages, I have a real concern. We've already talked about some of the education through higher ed and career tech and who the customer is going to be in the workforce shortages. But I think there's another area that we need to be also considering is our smaller businesses that are not going to be able to pay $21 an hour. We're excited that we have new businesses coming to Oklahoma that's going to be paying higher wages. Our workforce is already limited, and I'm afraid that some of our really small businesses are going to be cannibalized in some of their workforce as we move forward. And so how do we work with that at the same time? I'm not sure that's a legislative fix. I just say it's something that we need to be cognizant of. When we look at the tax code and how to make it more competitive, all for doing that as much as we can. Leader Eccles referred to what we did this last session. Just keep in mind, whenever we drop corporate tax down from 6% down to 4%, when that's fully realized, we're going to have about a $236 million cost to that. We did the personal income tax by a quarter point, in FY23, when that's fully realized, that's $110 million. So when you add those things together, you're about $338, $39 million that we have had in times past inside of our budget. And then with all the federal money that's coming in, the question's got to be, what does our budget look like today? So what we may say, we're for looking at our tax code, and I appreciate the work the Chamber's done in their study, the Tax Foundation working with you. I'm personally looking at the throwback tax and what that looks like and what impact that has on growing businesses here. And so I think if we go in that direction, I think those are two areas I have a great deal of concern about.
Well, our caucus has long supported education and training for our workforce. And now more than ever, we can see just from the feedback here, but also from the national experts that we're hearing from and our speaker today, that workforce shortages are a problem across the country. In Oklahoma, our caucus supports the training and the education. We've always supported higher education, our community colleges, our career techs. We need to make sure that we continue to give them the resources and the funding to be able to help and keep workforce development going. You know, we have some really great industries in our state. Aerospace industry is a perfect example. It's fast growing. It is.
Keep on going. It's
I feel
working.
like I need to come out like this when I hear that. But it's a wonderful industry, but it's a fast growing industry and it's a technological industry. And if we don't have the proper training, if we don't have education here in the state for aerospace, we'll lose it. So we've got to continue to fund education and training to keep our workforce ready.
I think we had our board meeting earlier today, and we had a robust discussion about where the Chamber's priority is going to be on education reform as it fits into the workforce space. And really, it's critical. I mean, and so for us as a team, seeing those results, seeing the polling that we did, workforce is just a critical issue for everything that Oklahoma wants to be, for everything that we're aspirational and the things that we want to do. If we don't fix that part, none of those things really become possible. And so just so encouraged that I think there's no question in my mind we're going to get aligned on how to do that. And I think that those dollars that you are going to invest in that are going to make a significant impact into making Oklahoma, the state that we really know we can be. So fantastic answers. Really appreciated that. We're going to make sure we honor getting you out of here on time. So we're going to end with two fun questions. So Lindsay will go to the last two. And so we're first going to ask them, and then we'll get an audience poll. We'll find out. So this will just be a simple one. The first question for you is, SEC or Big 12, all right? So SEC or Big 12, you have to pick one or the other. So, leader?
Oh, SEC.
SEC?
And Boomer.
Okay, all right. You don't have a choice. We already know your answer.
I am a representative from Norman.
Okay, yeah, right.
It's been a rough week for us.
Big 12.
Big 12. Say that louder a little bit.
Big 12.
There we go, all right.
Pass.
Pass, okay. All right, so let's take a look at the room. I was just really curious how this would play out. Got 150 of you voting, pretty even. Pac-12? Yeah, we should put Pac-12 on there.
Be quiet.
Yeah. Boo. Was that Hilbert?
Chad, I'm just glad that we have a coach now, and I didn't have to come to this room and field questions on.
That's true, because one of the poll questions was going to be, who do you think is going to be next coach? So we had to remove that one.
Yeah.
And then we'll end with this, because this is, for everybody who's involved in legislative politics, this is one that we always ask. And we always are thoughtful about. And Jen Dunlap is going to have an opinion, and many others. Will the legislature adjourn early, yes or no?
Yes.
Leader Virgin? No chance. Leader Floyd? All right, we'll see what the audience says. Will they adjourn early? 61% of you think no. 63, we'll let a little more voting come in. We always ask it. We always wondered. It's the question we would think about all year long. Ray Rice will stay awake at night thinking about this. And it looks like the audience thinks no, so we'll probably, it's like Groundhog Day. We know we're going to be with you until the end of May. So I want to give a big round of applause to our panelists. I want to thank you all for engaging in the conversation as well, and for attending today. And again, another big round of applause for our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.